They say football doesn't do sentiment. But try telling that to Anfield under floodlights, with "You'll Never Walk Alone" stretching skyward like a hymn of grief and fire. Try telling that to Mohamed Salah, hands on his knees, tears on his cheeks, the chorus of Diogo Jota's name wrapping itself around his heart. Try telling that to a stadium mourning a forward who never stopped running, and honoring him with a match that never stopped breathing. This was the opening day of the Premier League, apparently. Liverpool 4, Bournemouth 2. A mundane sentence for what felt like emotional warfare with occasional football. The scoreboard? A lie, mostly. It doesn't tell you about the ache of every Liverpool touch in the opening minutes. It doesn't whisper anything about the black armbands or the silence that wasn't silent at all. Not in feeling. Not in meaning. It doesn't capture how Federico Chiesa's volley was less a goal and more a gasp, or how Antoine Semenyo's thunderbolts were louder than the boos, the racism, the rot that clung to the moment and tried to stain it. It doesn't tell you about the ghosts that moved through this match, Jota's, and the ones in Liverpool's backline. But we will. Because the Premier League is back, and it brought poetry, pain, and just a little bit of Premier League chaos. It was surreal. Not because it was 6 goals, but because it felt like every one of them was personal. Liverpool started like a team with something to prove, or maybe with something to escape. You could feel the nervous energy bleeding through their press. Every pass had this hesitation like it had to be correct, like there was a higher purpose, like Jota was watching, and maybe he was. Because the first goal felt like a tribute, not rehearsed, not sanitized, just raw joy carved out of a tough night. Ekitike. Remember the name. Actually, no. Scratch that. Remember the feeling. This kid, Premier League debut, new kit, new country, new weight on his shoulders, picks the ball up near halfway, shrugs off a defender like it was a bad memory, and walks into space like it was a living room. Cool finish. Colder than Petrovic's fingertips. First goal. First point of explosion. The cop loses its mind, and maybe their grief, for just a second. Then came Gakpo. But the second goal didn't feel like an eruption. It felt patient. A surgical slice through a defense that had just stood and watched the Ekitike show for 45 minutes. It was classic Gakpo. Composed, late, devastating. And just as Liverpool dared to believe the script might hold, Antoine Semenyo tore it to pieces. Twice. Forget structure. Forget shape. Forget Arne Slot's balance. This was Semenyo saying, "I don't care about your tactical evolution. I'm gonna run." And run he did. Past Kirkez, past Konate, who I'm not entirely convinced was awake, and past Allison. He scored one from a move that began with himself in his own half. The other? A finish so confident it belonged to someone who hadn't just been racially abused minutes earlier. That's what made this match so unmanageable. It wasn't just that Semenyo scored. It's that he did it under the weight of something unspeakably cruel. And he didn't just survive. He took over the game. Imagine the psychological warfare that must take. To play on. To play through it. To play better. He didn't just equalize for Bournemouth. He equalized everything. The scoreboard. The narrative. The rhythm. The grief. Anfield was stunned. No, really. You could feel it like fog. It was as if the entire stadium leaned back, eyes wide, suddenly aware that this thing, this match, this moment could get away from them. And then just like that, it didn't. Federico Chiesa, the forgotten man, the backup violin in a symphony of big names, arrives with 2 touches and leaves with a hymn of his own. Salah crosses, Petrovic spills, Diakite flicks, and Chiesa, guides it home, like he's been waiting a year for just this second. The eruption wasn't a cheer. It was a relief scream. It was Anfield dragging itself back from the edge of spiritual collapse and saying, "No, not tonight." And then Salah made sure. Of course he did. He always does. It wasn't even the best goal he's ever scored, but it didn't have to be. It was Salah being Salah. Clever, cold-blooded, inevitable. He even made Endo's clearance into an assist, because that's the kind of player he is. Everything falls his way because he makes it so. He walks off in tears, alone, the crowd singing a song that doesn't belong to him but still feels like home. 4-2. Technically accurate. Emotionally incomplete. Because this wasn't a game. This was a season distilled into one match. Joy, tragedy, defiance, heartbreak, redemption, collapse, resurrection. It all happened, and it all mattered. It wasn't clean, it wasn't comfortable, it wasn't even fully celebratory, but it was honest, and it was real. And you know what? For all the chaos, the noise, the late goals, the terrible defending, and the unforgettable moments, it felt like football was back. Not just the league. The feeling. Welcome to the season. Let's get into how we got there. Buckle up. The first half didn't open. It detonated. If you were late getting to your seat, you missed the early clues. You missed Bournemouth looking Liverpool dead in the eyes and saying, "Let's dance." You missed Antoine Semenyo immediately deciding that Milos Kerkez, his old teammate, was his new chew toy. You missed a near-post corner that had to be hacked away by Szoboszlai after Evan Nilsson flicked it dangerously. And you definitely missed Hugo Ekitike taking about 3 minutes to announce himself with a shot from 25 yards. Soft effort, maybe. But message received. I'm here. And I'm not shy. But if you were in your seat, good luck staying in it. The half kept twitching. There was a kind of frantic tempo. Not beautiful football, but buzzing football. Like both teams were playing with an itch under their skin. You couldn't relax. They wouldn't let you. And then came the first flashpoint. Senesi. Handball? Yeah, obviously. Unless your job is to not see things that happen in front of your face. He reached out with his hand like a man trying to shut off a microwave before it beeps. That ball was Ekitike's. That was a red card all day and twice on opening weekend. But no. Not even a foul. Apparently it bounced off his sole and onto his elbow, and that's legal now. Jamie Carragher looked like he'd swallowed a whistle. The referee said, "Play on," and Bournemouth nearly scored 2 minutes later. Liverpool, having just been wronged, were suddenly being schooled by Tavernier and Semenyo. That right side? Open for business. Semenyo hits it over, but the warning sirens were howling. And then, right around the 20th minute, the noise changed. The Diogo Jota song. You know the one. You've heard it from the cop before, but this time, it didn't feel like football. It felt like memory. Like grief turned into sound. The whole ground belted it like it had been holding it in since July. I've watched a lot of games, but I've never seen players pause mid-run to listen to a song. It was eerie. It was beautiful. It was too much. And maybe it gave Liverpool the push they needed. Minute 37. Mac Allister, looking suspiciously like a midfielder who refuses to acknowledge pressure exists, plays a simple pass into Ekitike, and Senesi, who had spent most of the half desperately trying to not get arrested by VR, plays statue. 1-on-1. Petrovic versus the new kid. You'd expect nerves, you'd expect hesitation. Instead, we got composure. Ekitike doesn't blast it, doesn't panic, he just slides it past the keeper like he's ordering a coffee. 1-0. Welcome to the Premier League. And just like that, Anfield breathes, the anxiety melts. For a second, because Bournemouth don't go away. They don't sulk. They storm back up the pitch and nearly equalize through Tavernier, who somehow finds space where no space should be. Ellison does just enough. But you could feel the pressure start to build again. Then came the racism. It stops everything. Semenyo, visibly shaken, halts the game. Anthony Taylor calls both managers over. There's a hush. A deep, uncomfortable silence. The kind that wraps around your chest. Not because people don't care, but because nobody knows what to do. Because it keeps happening. Because it keeps being tolerated by people who look the other way. To his eternal credit, Semenyo doesn't leave. He doesn't crumble. He plays on. And he plays well. But the rhythm of the match stutters. You can see it on the faces. Liverpool try to find control again, through Szoboszlai, through Frimpong on the right, through Gakpo dropping deep. But Bournemouth stay alive. They almost grab one before the break too. Another Tavernier cross. Semenyo lurking. Chaos in the box. But no goal. Halftime hits like a slap. Liverpool are ahead, but they don't look safe. Bournemouth are behind, but they don't look worried. And the entire stadium is carrying about 4 different emotional weights. You've got the grief of Jota, the anger of the Semenyo incident, the frustration at the refereeing, the pure adrenaline of an end-to-end half. And somewhere in all that mess, you've got the feeling that we might be watching something a little bit bigger than football. A minute's silence was held before the match, but nothing about this game was quiet. Second half coming up. Second halves are supposed to be where things settle. You regroup, reset, maybe rehydrate. In theory, football becomes more pragmatic, cooler heads, fewer risks. That did not happen here. The second half was chaos with a whistle. Not structured chaos. Not tactically intriguing chaos. No. This was the kind of chaos that makes you question if either team had any intention of defending with dignity. It starts with Gakpo, and it starts with Hugo Ekitike. Again, remember him? The new kid who spent the first half embarrassing defenders and looking like he was born in a Liverpool shirt? Well, he's back. Kerkez threads a ball into the box, probably the best thing he did all night before being yanked off, and Ekitike doesn't panic. He could have shot. He should have shot. But instead, he just lays it off. Like a teacher setting up a group project and trusting someone else to finish it. Gakpo does. Clinical. Walks across the box like he's on a Sunday stroll and places it in the corner. Petrovic is still wondering if he should have come out for it. 2-0. Job done? Not even close. Because right after that, Liverpool start playing like the job is done. They let go of the steering wheel. The press evaporates. The midfield becomes one giant invitation. Szoboszlai starts doing everything except tracking runners. Mac Allister starts taking more risks than a bored teenager on a rooftop. And Konate? Konate looks like he lost a bet to be on the pitch. His positioning becomes an avant-garde art project, nowhere near the ball and somehow also nowhere near the danger. 64 minutes. Semenyo time. It begins with a Szoboszlai turnover. Routine mistake. But then Adams, who'd been mostly invisible, springs to life and sends Brooks down the wing. Konate decides to give him the space of the Mersey to operate. And Brooks, calm, surgical, under control, slides it across. Semenyo, bottom corner, 2-1. Game back on, no celebration, just focus. The kind of focus that says this isn't over and it wasn't, not even close. From here on, it's mayhem. Bournemouth smell blood. They're pressing Liverpool's backline like a pack of wolves who just realized the door to the chicken coop was left open. Evanilson misses one. Tavernier nearly finds a late runner. Brooks again gets behind. Semenyo is everywhere. The Liverpool midfield? Missing? Presumed creatively distracted. Then minute 77 arrives like a bad omen. Bournemouth break again. It's a jailbreak. 4-on-2. Semenyo could pass. He should pass. But he doesn't. He says, nah, I'm scoring this myself. He drives, cuts inside, and buries it in the far corner. 2-2. Silence at Anfield. That strange, eerie silence that only happens when a crowd gets punched in the soul. You don't need to hear boos. It's louder than that. It's absence. It's belief leaking out of seats. And Semenyo. Still no celebration. It's not even defiance anymore. It's power. This is a man who's already fought more battles in one match than most will face all season. This is just his final act. And it stings. Arne Slot looks like someone just unplugged his controller. He starts subbing like he's trying to fix a leaky dam with chewing gum. Off comes Ekitike. Off comes Mac Allister. On comes Jones. Liverpool are unraveling. But then, and this is where football turns theatrical, Chiesa. Now let's talk about that substitution, because everyone and their dog thought it was weird. Why take off Wirtz? Why put on Federico Chiesa, a man who's had the kind of Liverpool career you usually file under forgotten loan spells? He's been on milk cartons more than team sheets. But here's the thing. Football is cruel. And football is stupid. And football is magic. Salah floats in a cross. Petrovic palms it awkwardly. Ekitike tries to clear it and ends up lobbing it backward like a man trying to remember how gravity works. And who's there? Chiesa. Always the bridesmaid, never the starter. Second touch, volley, net, 3-2, and Anfield erupts. Not with joy, with release. With, oh, thank God we don't have to talk about this defensive collapse for the next week. With, we're still alive. With, Yoda would have loved that. Bournemouth sag. They're tired. They've run themselves inside out. But Liverpool smell blood of their own. 90+4. Salah time. Endo boots the ball into orbit, and somehow, Salah is the first to react. He glides onto it like a dancer, cuts inside, and slides it into the bottom corner with the kind of nonchalance that only comes from scoring about 4 million goals in your life. 4-2. It's over. Finally. Salah doesn't celebrate. He doesn't need to. He stands alone, applauding the crowd that's still singing Diogo Jota's name. It's not a football moment anymore. It's a human one. And there it is, 6 goals, dozens of chances, one racial incident, one beautiful tribute, several defensive disasters, a breakout star, a resurrected winger, and a stadium trying to process all of it, all at once. No one will remember the defending. No one will remember the midfield sloppiness. But they will remember the noise, the feelings, the scenes. They'll remember that football came back, and it didn't tiptoe in, it smashed down the door, and then it hugged you, just before it broke your heart again. Let's talk about the players, because someone has to answer for this madness. Let's start with the name on everyone's lips, the name that's going to be printed on about 15,000 kids' shirts by next week. Hugo Ekitike. Good Lord. What an introduction. I mean, we've seen flashy debuts, we've seen goal-scoring debuts, but this was something else entirely. This was swagger wrapped in silk. This was an audition for cult hero status that he nailed in 45 minutes flat. 1 goal, 1 assist. But more than that, he made Liverpool feel dangerous again. Every time the ball touched his feet, the air changed. It's not just about pace or power, which he has in abundance. It's about the way he carries himself, like the Premier League is something he's already conquered in his mind and just needs to get around to doing in real life. He plays like someone who thinks he's the main character, and unfortunately for Bournemouth, he was right. The run for his goal? Sharp, direct, full of intent. The touch past Senesi. Cold-blooded. The finish? Like he was closing a car door. Then the assist? Unselfish, elegant, generous. It wasn't just smart football. It was grown-up football. The kind you don't teach. The kind that comes from a player who doesn't just want to be great, he expects to be. And then, as if to remind us that all is not perfect in the kingdom of Klopp 2.0, sorry, slot ball, we must now turn to the comedy troupe masquerading as Liverpool's defense. Let's go ahead and talk about Ibrahima Konate. He looked like he was trying to complete a geometry homework assignment while the match was happening. You know that feeling when your phone's GPS lags for 2 seconds and suddenly you're on the wrong freeway? That was Konate for about 85 of the 90 minutes. Constantly out of step. Always just almost in the right place. Twice he got roasted in the build-up to Bournemouth goals. Twice he looked like he was buffering. His partner, Virgil van Dijk, wasn't disastrous, but the aura has faded, hasn't it? There's a wariness to him now, like a man who just realized he can't cover for 3 players anymore. There was one moment where he had to put out a Tavernier cross, and you could practically hear him sighing as he did it. He's still elite, but elite surrounded by chaos looks an awful lot like concern. Then there's Milos Kerkez. Now this is awkward. His first match for Liverpool, against his old team, and he got absolutely cooked by his old friend Semenyo, who must have circled this date in red ink on his calendar and written, "Time to make Milos cry." Every time Semenyo squared up, Kerkez looked like he was seeing ghosts. That yellow card? Deserved. The substitutions? Predictable. Frimpong on the right was no better. Pushed so high up the pitch, he might as well have been selling match programs in the front row. Slot system demands width, but if your fullbacks are that high, and your center backs are auditioning for a Wes Anderson film, you're basically gambling your dignity on every counterattack. Speaking of which, Antoine Semenyo deserves every flower he gets. Let's be clear. What he endured tonight should never happen in any stadium, anywhere, ever. And that he still played like he had fire in his boots and ice in his veins, that's not just professionalism. That's defiance turned into brilliance. 2 goals. Both stunning. One created from a full-pitch solo run, the other off a perfect run between the lines. He gave Liverpool nightmares. He made Kerkez look like a hologram. And he didn't once let the occasion overpower him. It's not just that he was the best player on the pitch for large stretches, it's that he had every reason not to be. And he still was. Bournemouth had other standouts too. David Brooks was busy and bright. Tavernier caused problems. Evanilson should have scored, probably should have passed a few times, but his movement was promising. Adams was tidy. Petrovic made 2 big saves that kept them in it, especially from Salah and McAllister. But after Semenyo, the rest of Bournemouth felt like a chorus. He was the lead. He played like he was fighting ghosts, and maybe he was. Now the Liverpool midfield. Let's call it experimental. McAllister? Creative, yes, but also looked like he was playing in a dream where your legs don't work right. A couple of giveaways, a few too many risky passes. He's always calm, but today it was the kind of calm that makes you scream, "Someone just kick it away." Szoboszlai was everywhere, not necessarily in a good way. pressing high, chasing shadows, and pinging the ball like a man determined to prove his highlight reel has depth. But defensively, absent. At one point, he looked over his shoulder like he was hoping someone else would chase Brooks. Spoiler alert, no one did. Wirtz, on his debut, had flashes, some sharp turns, clever touches, nearly scored. But he faded, didn't he? The engine's there, the quality's obvious, but Premier League rhythm isn't something you learn in training. He'll be better. He has to be. Then Chiesa. Federico bloody Chiesa. He gets 5 minutes, he scores the goal. The game winner. After being basically a remember him trivia question all year. I don't even think he warmed up properly. He just strolled on, found the ball, and reminded everyone that he used to be the next big thing. Maybe he still is. And Salah? Quiet. Until he wasn't. Which is to say, typical. He barely touched the ball in the first hour, probably wondering if his Wi-Fi was down. Then, in the final moments, he scored his 12th goal against Bournemouth. Because of course he did. Because Mohamed Salah plays by different rules. He doesn't care about form or rhythm. He's inevitable. And tonight he was emotional. He was the last to leave the pitch, the last to stop clapping, the last to look up at the fans and soak in a song that wasn't about him. You could see it on his face. This wasn't just a win. This was something else. Something heavier. Anfield lost a brother this summer. Tonight, they played like they hadn't forgotten. And that's it. Liverpool 4. Bournemouth 2. It won't be remembered for the scoreline. It'll be remembered for the storm. For the sorrow. For Semenyo. For Salah's tears, for Chiesa's moment, for Ekitike's arrival, for everything that football, in its ugliest and most beautiful forms, can be. This has been Across the Pitch. Over and out.